Hello, everyone. Welcome to another CNCF live webinar. Today, we are talking about the Kubernetes 1.33 release. I'm Libby Schultz with CNCF, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. And I'd like to welcome our presenters today, Nina Polshikova, Dipesh Rawat, and Ryota Sawada, all with the Kubernetes 1.33 release team. A few housekeeping items as we get started. During the webinar, you'll be able to drop questions into the chat box, so feel free to do so, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. This is an official webinar of the CNCF and as such is subject to the CNCF Code of Conduct. Please do not add anything to the chat or questions that would be in violation of that Code of Conduct, and please be respectful of all of your fellow participants and presenters. With that, I'm going to hand things over to the team to take it away.
Great, thanks, Libby. So first, we'll do intros. I can start. So my name is Nina Polshikova. I'm a software engineer at Solo, working on API gateway features, and I have actually been part of the Kubernetes release team since 127, so a couple of years, and I was the release lead for the 133 release that just wrapped up. Dipesh, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Depesh Rawat. So I was leading the enhancement team for 1.33. So I've been involved with the release team for last 1 year. And I've been dipping my toes into various other parts of Kubernetes with SIG docs and SIG Node and other like that. And I'm also a CNCF ambassador along with Nina. And in my day job, I work with Kubernetes and containers at IBM. That's it from me.
Hi, this is Ryota Sawada. I was leading the communication side for version 1.33 and have been in the release team from 132. So it's relatively recent journey for me, but have been using Kubernetes quite a bit for several years to this date. Outside of Kubernetes contribution, I'm currently unaffiliated, so I'm just taking it easy, taking some break for paternity, just working on Kubernetes release team now. So yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thanks everyone. And there's a couple of people that I can't have on this webinar because there's just so many of them. But the Kubernetes release team consists of a lot of people, and the release wouldn't be possible without all of them. So I'd like to shout out all the different teams: Enhancements, Release Signal, Docs, Comms, all the shadows, the Emeritus Advisor Angelos, the release team sub-project leads Kat and Grace, and branch management, of course, so Jim and Mateo. So all of these people worked really hard the last couple of months to get 133 out the door. So I just want to take a moment to recognize everyone on this list. Dipesh or Ryota, anything you want to add from your sub-team lead positions?
Yeah, so we usually say it takes a village to get a Kubernetes release, and we take it for granted. So yeah, you can see 3 of us, but it's entire team on the screen. You can see I put hard efforts for last 3 months chasing up contributors, trying to get all the things on time, and we have the release on time. So yeah, thankful for everyone who has worked on this release behind the scenes.
And we'll be touching on some of the release team related updates later in the slide deck. So yeah, we'll be touching on that later.
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing I want to talk about is the theme. So each Kubernetes release has a secret code name, like a theme that the release lead gets to choose. So the theme for 133 was Octarine. And what is Octarine, you might ask? So like I mentioned, it's the release lead's job to kind of selfishly pick what the theme is. And I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. And in it, Octarine is this like color of magic. So it's the mythical 8 color that wizards and cats can see, but no one else. So I thought it would be fun to pick that as the theme this year because, or this release, because first of all, the number 8 kind of goes with, K8s. But also it highlights a lot of the open source magic that Kubernetes enables across the ecosystem. So in the logo, you can see that there's a little swamp dragon on top of a tower. So the tower in the book series is the wizard tower of the Unseen University. So all the wizards live there. And there's a Kubernetes moon that the dragon's looking up to. And around that moon, there are tiny little Kubernetes stars. So a fun Easter egg, if you're looking at a release log, if you inspect this image, it's actually an SVG where every single star has a label on it. And there's 64 stars, and in this release we actually had 64 keps. So each star is labeled with a unique kep because that's what it represents. I had a lot of fun making this logo in another open source project called Inkscape. So it's a labor of love. It was a lot of fun to make. My partner actually helped teach me how to use Inkscape as part of this process because I'm not an artist by day. So it was very fun to make, and I think like taking a step back and reflecting on the release, Terry Pratchett had this great quote that's written on the bottom of the screen. It's still magic, even if you know how it works. And I think a lot of the time people know the ins and outs of Kubernetes. It kind of just works. It's boring to run. Those are all good things. But if you take a step back and reflect on how powerful it is, I think it still remains magical to this day. And I think this release reflects the magic of open source, like the amount of people that get together in order to build this giant project. It's really remarkable. So cool. With that, Depesh, do you want to tell us what the enhancements are this release?
Yeah, sure. So 1.33 was the first release of this year, 2025, and it sets the tone and sets the bar very high at 64 enhancement, which is a little bit usual than little bit higher than what we expect, but it sets the positive tone for the year. So we had 64 enhancements that were present in 1.33 release. Out of those, 24 enhancements or features are the newly introduced alpha features. 20 features have moved to beta and 18 have graduated to stable. And there are 2 features or enhancements that we have deprecated or withdrawn in keeping in line with keeping Kubernetes clean, efficient, and removing things that we don't need or cause confusion. So the complete list of enhancements you can see in the GitHub tracking board that we have linked in the slides, which will be shared to you post this talk. So as you can see, there is a good mix of new features and features that we have graduated and worked towards getting Kubernetes to a resilient way and making it production ready. So moving on to the major themes on the release. So as you can see, there were 64 enhancements. And if we talk about all the enhancements, we can sit here for 3 hours long, and I don't know if anybody wants to see that movie. So we drill down our focus into only the stable enhancements. So we'll go with SIGs, I think. So first is the SIG network. So SIG is special interest group. So network. So networking is basically the fundamental core principle of Kubernetes. So SIG network is a group that is focused on making sure Kubernetes is resilient enough and production ready and scalable in terms of networking. So they had a couple of caps that were going into stable this release. So first is multiple service siders. So the work for this enhancement was done under the cap 1880. So now you might have listened to me saying cap twice and Nina also twice. So what is a cap? So cap basically stands for Kubernetes Enhancement Proposal. So it is a way of proposing new features to Kubernetes. So it involves a design document that lives into version control GitHub that is a very comprehensive document. It consists of various sections as to what was the motivation behind this feature, what are the goals, non-goals, how is this going to be tested, how can this be switched off. So it's a very comprehensive document that is a living document that we iterate over as the enhancement of the feature moves from alpha, beta, and finally it graduates. So it's a very cool document. So if you get a chance if you want to know more about a feature, I highly recommend go and read the cap.readme, which is the cap document. So coming back to the enhancement, that is multiple service siders. So typically in Kubernetes, service is a way of abstracting how do we expose applications that are running inside pods. So there is a particular type of service known as cluster IP. So it has a particular virtual IP address that is scoped at a cluster level. That means so if there is a service that is already running at a particular IP and you try to define another service at a same IP, you tend to get an error. So this enhancement was basically trying to resolve that issue. So it introduces 2 new API objects, that is server siders and API address, which the user and the cluster admin can use to dynamically increase the IP address that can be allotted to the service of type cluster IP in the service. So this has graduated to stable. It is a production ready feature, so you can go ahead and start using it in your use case.
Great. So the next one is NF tables. So NF table backend for kubeproxy is also stable. This is KEP 3866. Again, like if you want to learn more details, you can check out the whole KEP design doc. But for some background, the default kubeproxy in Kubernetes for Linux is currently based on IP tables. So NF tables were first made available in the Linux kernel in like 3.13 in like 2014. So a couple of years ago, and most upstream development has moved to NF tables since then. So NF tables offer some improvements in terms of scalability and performance over IP tables, such as you can do incremental changes to the rule set. So this KEP it shifts because now kubeproxy is like NF table support exists for kubeproxy. It better aligns with the direction of modern Linux networking in general. But an important thing to note is for compatibility reasons, IP tables are still the default, even though this is a stable feature. So if you want to check it out, there's a migration guide as part of the docs that you can try out. But the default remains IP tables. Cool. Next.
Yep, I can talk about that. So topology-aware routing with traffic distribution of preferred close. So topology-aware routing goes to stable support in this release, and these are there are two KEPs that are associated with this particular feature, and both graduating to GA with the version 133. So the newly added field or traffic distribution of preferred close is the key for this new support. And the topology-aware routing provides us better performance and cost efficiency, where components like kubeproxy can prioritize traffic to stay in the same zone. So yeah.
Great.
Yes, so coming on to SIG Apps, so this is again a special interest group, SIG Apps. So this is basically, this group is responsible for basically everything that is related to developing, deploying and operating applications on Kubernetes. So again, they have a few enhancements in this release that have gone into stable. So talking about the first one, that is back of limits per index for index job, which is quite a mouthful. So the work for this enhancement was done under KEP 3850. So what this enhancement was trying to solve. So in Kubernetes, index jobs are basically used to run multiple tasks where each job is defined by a unique index. But if a particular task is failing repeatedly, there is a parameter known as back-off limit. But unfortunately or fortunately, it was designed a way that that parameter was applicable to the entire job. As in, a single repeated task failing could lead to the failure of the entire job. So this enhancement basically extended or helped the users to set the back-off limit per index, allowing individual tasks to fail without affecting the entire job. So you can think of a use case where you are running integration test, and it's not that one failure in a test is going to cause the entire suite to fail. So it gives us granular management over tasks. So this enhancement is again that is something gone to stable, and I'll highly recommend you test this out and use it in your use case. So next is the job success policy. Again, this is one of the enhancement by SIG Apps. So the work for this was done under the KEP 3998. So the basic objective of this enhancement was to extend the job API to specify conditions under which an index job can be succeeded. So now you have an index job that is running multiple tasks or multiple jobs within it. Now there might be a case where a partial success of few jobs can be used to mark as the entire job as success, and you don't need the entire tasks to succeed in order to mark that job as particular job as successful. So there are now ways to specify that. So there are pod indexes that you must succeed, that you can specify the number of indexes that you want in that particular job to succeed, or there is a flexibility to supply the number of how many pods do you want to succeed, you want to succeed, or the combination of both. So basically it is giving you the flexibility of how you want your workload to be called as successful. So this feature is basically for job management, making it more adaptive and efficient according to your use case.
Great. So next up is SIG Off. There's one enhancement from SIG Off that's graduating to stable in this release. So that is bound service account token security improvements, also a mouthful. So this one you might have seen before, actually, because in 132, part of it graduated to stable. But in 133, service account token node bindings is now stable. So what this allows is creating service account tokens bound to node objects, like the name implies. And that means users can now bind a service account token's validity to a named node object, similar to how you can do the same thing for pod-bound tokens. So that means tokens now can be restricted to specific nodes, which reduces the use of the misuse of the tokens and strengthens your cluster security. So this is KEP 4193, and again, it's now stable for the service account token node binding feature.
And next up is SIG CLI for command line interface. And SIG CLI has one KEP that goes to stable, and that is sub-resource support in kubectl. So this support of sub-resource arguments has been in beta since 1.27, and 133 marks its graduation to stable. The sub-resources of status, scale, and resize are supported now. And an example use case of that would be to scale up a resource using kubectl. You can specify with -- sub-resource equals to scale, and something like kubectl patch, the deployment of nginx, and -- sub-resource, specifying that is going to be a scale, and specifying a spec of replica 2 or 3, depending on the use case. So this sort of sub-resource specific patching required curl or similar API direct calls, but now this is fully supported with sub-resource argument, and you can find more about how this can be used in the kubectl kube control reference as linked here. And moving on to SIG Node, so node related items, there are two KEPs that go out to stable. So the first one is sidecar containers, and this KEP is one of the oldest KEPs that we will be talking about today. KEP 753 is the one that we're looking at right now, and this will be probably my personal favorite of this particular release. So the sidecar pattern has been around for quite a long time, where you have auxiliary containers to handle some extra capabilities such as networking adjustments and logging, a few other things. And this pattern is especially useful to separate concerns, allowing application containers to not worry about capabilities handled by sidecar containers like networking details or logging handling, etc. Having multiple containers within a pod has been always supported, but there were some challenges with the sidecar deployment pattern, including how and when to terminate when the main container shuts down. So the sidecar support makes use of init containers. You can find more about in the KEP to have better pod lifecycle, ensuring those auxiliary containers to keep running even when it fails unexpectedly, and also terminate along the main containers if it needs to shut down. So that's the sidecar containers. You can find more in the KEP 753. Moving on to the next one for SIG Node is options to reject non-SMT aligned workload. So SMT stands for simultaneous multi-threading. This enhancement has been in beta for quite some time, since 123, but now is generally available with 133. It provides a finer control of how CPU cores get used, where CPU resources can be used exclusively for those latency sensitive use cases such as AI, ML, HFT, etc., and prevent problems coming from noisy neighborhoods by restricting thread allocation. And you can find more in the KEP 2625 as listed here.
Coming on to SIG scheduling, that is again a special interest group scheduling. This one is easy, as the name implies. They are responsible for enhancing scheduling within Kubernetes. So they take care of our main component, that is kube scheduler, that helps in scheduling or determining which node to place the workload on, along with other components that are related to scheduling. So they too have a couple of enhancements. that went to schedule, that went to stable this release. So I think the first is defining pod affinity or anti-affinity using matched label keys and mismatched label keys. So the work for this enhancement was done under the CAP 3633. So this enhancement basically allows users to define pod affinity and anti-affinity using two new fields. So why was this necessary? So consider a scenario where you are upgrading in your cluster and there is a situation where you need both your old and your new workloads to exist simultaneously. At that point, it becomes difficult or it becomes very dodgy for the scheduler to honor the APIs that was defined originally into the pod affinity and anti-affinity. So these two new fields give us precise control and help the scheduler to take those decisions. So now the pods can be either be scheduled, either they are co-locating, that is affinity, or you need them to be separated, that is anti-affinity, based on what value do you specify to those new two labels, that is match label keys and mismatch label keys. So this helps the scheduler to make decisions that are more flexible and efficient, which helps in rolling upgrades and isolating the services in your cluster. So coming on to the another enhancement from SIG scheduling that has gone to stable, that is considering taints and toleration when calculating port topology spread skew. I think we need to work on a CAP that shortens the name of the CAP. So the work for this enhancement was done under the CAP 3094. So again, this enhancement improves how Kubernetes distributes pod across nodes by considering both taints and toleration during the placement. So it again adds two new settings, that is pod affinity policy and node affinity policy and node taints policy. So node affinity policy makes sure that the pod is only placed on the node that may match their affinity rules, while node taints policy decides whether to consider the node taints when the pod is being placed. So by factoring in both these affinity and taints, this update helps us to maintain more balanced and predictable pod distribution in the cluster.
Great. So next up we have SIG Storage. So this is enhancements around volumes. So there's two enhancements that are going to stable in 133. The first one is volume populators. It has a short and sweet name. So volume populators are controllers that can create non-empty volumes. So the contents of those volumes is determined by a custom resource with the new data source ref field. So this feature allows users to pre-populate volumes with data using the new data source ref field, not just from the data source field that only supported persistent volume claims, clones, or volume snapshots. So you can read more about this KEP in KEP 1495, but this is again stable now, and you can check out some use cases in the KEP design doc. The second KEP that is coming from SIG Storage and graduating into stable is always honor persistent volume reclaim policy. So the persistent volume reclaim policy used to be ignored if the bound persistent volume was deleted before its associated persistent volume claim. So this could result in the external storage asset that was associated with it not being deleted, and that could potentially cause like volume leakage. So now there's a new protection in place. So if you're using a persistent volume with the delete reclaim policy, there's a finalizer that makes sure that the reclaim policy is carried out no matter what order things are deleted in. So you can read more about this KEP in 2644. And this again prevents unintended retention of those storage resources and maintains the consistency with the lifecycle management of the persistent volume.
All right, so we are 25 minutes in and we have covered all the stable changes, the KEPs that went out for 133. And we would like to touch on the deprecations and removals. And there is a bit of kind of difficult numbering coming in here. We did mention that there are two deprecations in this particular 133 release. And actually, there are two more that we would like to highlight here. And so we'll start with the first one about the deprecation of the stable endpoints API. So this endpoints will be probably familiar to many who are using Kubernetes, who have been using Kubernetes for some time. And this does look a bit scary from the headline, but it should have basically no impact for most use cases, as we use endpoint slices API. So you can read a little bit more about this in KEP 4974. But the difference between endpoints API and also endpoint slices API is how it represents multiple network endpoints. And since becoming stable in version 1.21, there have been various new features introduced to endpoint slices API, not the one that's been deprecated here. So the endpoints API did not get those updates. And if you have some specific use cases using endpoints API directly, perhaps from a script or some resource that is directly looking at the API, you will need to migrate to use endpoint slices API instead. And you can find more about the migration and implication details in the blog of the Kubernetes 133, continuing the transition from endpoints to endpoint slices.
Great. Next up, we have this one.
Coming on to the next removal, that is the removal of kubeproxy version information in node status. So the work for this deprecation or removal was done under KEP 4004. So just a little bit of context. So in your node status information, you get a kubeproxy version field that is set by the kubelet, but unfortunately the kubelet does not know the version of kubeproxy, even if the kubeproxy is running. So it was decided that this field is very inaccurate and it has little to no usefulness. So it was decided that this version is no longer going to be shown as it is inaccurate. So this change helps to reduce those confusion and ensure that the node status data information remains accurate. So it's a simple removal which shouldn't impact a lot of people.
Yep.
Coming on to another removal, that is the removal of in-tree GitHub repo volume driver. So this removal was carried out under the KEP 5040. So just a little bit of context. So Git repo volume type has already been deprecated in Kubernetes since 1.11, which is nearly 7 years ago. And it was announced that this deprecation was basically because there were few security breaches that were possible because of remote code executions, getting root access on the node using this type of volume. So it was decided that in 1.33, the code for this entry GitHub repo volume driver is going to be removed. There are already alternative present, such as Git sinks and init containers that can be used. So it's a simple, straightforward removal of the volume driver code that we had in our code base. And again, there is a API code for the feature gate that is already present, that is at the moment present in the API, that is defaulted to false, but it is going to be removed in the future.
Great. And then our last removal is the removal of host network support for Windows pods. So for some background context, this feature landed in alpha a while back in 126, but it stayed in alpha and hasn't really graduated since then. And it allowed Windows pods, window pod containers to use the node's networking namespace. But as part of the implementation, there were some unexpected containerd behaviors and alternative solutions were available. So SIG Windows has decided to withdraw this KEP in 133. So it is getting removed as part of this release. One question that we have gotten is, does this affect host process containers? And the answer is no, that is a separate enhancement. So this removal only affects the host network support for Windows pods. It does not affect the host process containers enhancement at all. And another thing I think I want to call out is removals versus deprecations. So deprecations means that a feature is getting marked for removal, so it will still continue to function, but you should migrate away from it. Removal means that it is getting removed from the code space based on the descriptions that are provided in the KEP. So make sure you read the KEPs to fully understand how you might be impacted by these removals, but that's like the slight difference between deprecation and removal. Great, let's move on. So there are a couple other highlights that we want to make. So before we covered all the stable ones, these are some other notable highlights that we want to make sure we cover. So the first one is dynamic resource allocation galore. So in our release blog, we actually have a section dedicated to all the dynamic resource allocation features that are going into this release. There are a total of 6 new dynamic resource allocation features, and they're in different stages from alpha to beta. So none of these features are in stable yet, but I think it shows Kubernetes is evolving to meet the increasing demand for managing resources that aren't CPU and memory, but also managing FPGA resources and GPUs, which are becoming more and more common due to the AI workloads that are being run today. So a couple of these that I wanted to highlight. The first one was, again, there are like 6 total, so you should check out the blog to read about all of them. But the first one is the DRA device taints feature gate. So this means this feature is supporting taints and tolerations for DRA devices. The second feature is the DRA prioritized list. So device requests get a new field name called first available that you can use. And then another one that I think is good to call out is the new DRA admin access feature, which allows only authorized users to create resource claims or resource claim template objects in the namespace that's labeled admin access. So only those users can use the admin access field. But like I mentioned, there are more dynamic resource allocation features that you can learn about if you check out the dynamic resource allocation blog or the release blog for 133.
Cool. And I think the next one is in-place resource resize for vertical scaling of pod. So as an enhancement lead, I cannot pick a favorite child, but if I am forced to pick, so I will pick up this enhancement as my favorite. So the work for this enhancement was done under the cap 1287. So this enhancement basically is the in-place resource resize feature allows us to adjust the CPU and the memory of a running pod without having them to recreate. So traditionally, if you change a memory request to the memory limit in a running pod, it needs to restart itself, it needs to recreate. So as a part of this enhancement, the underlying objective or the motivation is to be able to adjust those memories and CPUs of a running pod without trying to recreate them. So this enhancement basically falls under SIG Node, that is special interest group for Node. So they are responsible for all the interaction of Kubernetes with Node resources as well as maintenance of the node itself. So now with in-pod updates, we can scale up and scale down the resources, keeping the pod running during those adjustments. So this is basically useful in vertical scaling. It makes more efficient use case and enables more seamless upgrades during, I think, for stateful application. So this has gone to beta. This is one I think a lot of people are waiting for going into stable. So this has gone into beta, so enable it and start using it. If there are any feedback, please feel free to give those feedbacks on the cap issue itself or raise the issue in the Kubernetes repo.
And then next we have the release team updates.
Yep. So this will be one of the last slides. So this release, we had a new team structure for the release team. So we are representing enhancements and also communications and also release team lead, but there was a merge of release notes team, and also the docs team. Those are both sub teams within the release team. It's a bit complicated how the release team actually works, and you can probably read up on that separately from the GitHub repo. But the merge happened so that the docs team, the docs sub team, works both for the docs and also the release notes. And this has happened as part of the 133, and we have had really great success of very smooth transition. So that was something that we wanted to talk about and be proud of all the changes that have gone in smoothly. And on top of that, there were quite a few featured blogs. There are a few that were mentioned within the slide. There were 16 featured blogs published for 133 release cycle, and there is one more coming probably shortly, sometime later today. So that would be 17, and possibly another blog coming up as well. So there are quite a few blogs that you can read up on about the version 133, specifically geared for particular features that were introduced as a part of the stable, beta, or alpha release. And during the 133 release, we had 121 different companies and 570 individuals contributing to the code, to the Kubernetes project. And we definitely would like to thank everyone who were involved, and also shout out to those who made the 133 release possible. And with that, I just want to talk about some of the references. If you can move to the next slide, Nina. So the release notes are available at the GitHub repository, Kubernetes, and you can go to changelog of the 133. And the release announcement is available as kubernetes.io blog, and then you can find the Kubernetes 133 release, which was released on April 23rd. And also this particular slide deck is available at Nina's GitHub repository, and that's Nina N. Poshakova/Kubernetes-v133 release webinar.
Great. Yeah, so with that, if you're interested in some of the enhancements we covered, or our roles, the 134 release team applications are now open. So if you're interested in shadowing a specific team, I encourage you to read through the handbooks first. So the SIG release repo has all of the handbooks for the different roles. It covers the time commitment it requires for each role, like what each role's responsibilities are, different like week by week breakdowns of like, this week you have to do this week you have to do that. So I highly encourage you first read the handbook, pick a team that interests you, and fill out an application. The applications are due on Sunday. So what is it, May 17th? 18th?
18th. Yes.
And like at midnight anywhere. So it might not actually be May 18th, depending on the time zone. It's I mean, I've been on the release team since 127, and it's a very fun and exciting way to get involved in Kubernetes and kind of get a sneak peek on what enhancements are coming down the pipeline, and what the community is working on. Does anyone want to give their own experience joining the release team?
Yeah, sure, I can go. So even if you have not worked in Kubernetes before, I would highly recommend that go and fill out the application. As Nina mentioned, we have comprehensive handbook as to what each role or each team does. So have a read through that handbook, whatever interests you or piques your interest that you want to learn about this area. Do fill out the form. So this is open to anyone at any level of experience. Whether you have worked with Kubernetes before, whether you are a Kubernetes expert, it doesn't matter. Your application will be evaluated at the same criteria. So I will highly recommend, if you want to get involved in Kubernetes release and see what goes behind the release, I would highly recommend go and apply.
Yeah, and I think I would just echo that. This does not require technical hands-on skills to be part of the team. Some teams may be better if you had some technical understanding and background, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to code things. So you can help out the Kubernetes community in so many ways, and one of the ways is maybe perhaps writing blogs, maybe perhaps writing documentation, or supporting with the release related operations that do take some time. So do not worry about you might not be skilled enough, or you might have some difficulty joining the team. I don't think that would be the case, but I do have to note that the applications that we receive, there are quite a few, so it is possible that you might not be selected. What I would suggest is just keep applying. I think most of the cases, it's not that your application was bad or you just didn't qualify. It's more that we had to accommodate the time zone and different background and just different set of people every release. So it doesn't mean that you just didn't have the right skill set. It's just more of a, I guess, a luck based on the selection. So that's just something that you need to keep in mind. But if you get selected, I think you would have a really nice team to work with and collaborate together with, similar background or similar interest, which is always nice to have.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Depeche mentioned, like, you don't need to have Kubernetes experience to join the Kubernetes release team. We've had a lot of students join in the past. Like one of our previous release leads, Grace, was a student at the time when she was the release lead. So she was taking exams and balancing open source work at the same time. So if you're a student and you're interested, the release team would love to have you as well. You definitely don't need to be like a Kubernetes expert in order to join the release team and get involved. All right. With that, I guess, do we have any questions?
Yes, let's open up the chat for questions. There was one. Are there any updates on Gateway API?
Yeah, so that is outside of the main Kubernetes. Like, all of these enhancements are tracked for KK, so the Kubernetes repo. Kubernetes Gateway API is actually separate from that, so they have their own release process and their own GEP tracking system. So Gateway enhancement proposals go there. This is all like code that's going into Kubernetes.
Awesome. Anyone else in the chat want to toss something in there? Feel free to go. Give them just a minute. But in the meantime, thank you all so much, Nina, Depeche, and Ryota, for coming in and educating us all and showing everyone all the updates. Oh, here we go. Super thorough. Thanks for the update and hope we get an opportunity to work with you, from Kat.
Thanks. I think one thing to call out is, again, there are a lot of enhancements in this release. There's 64. So we couldn't cover all of them. So I highly encourage you to check out the blog that Comms put together for the release. That covers a lot of highlights from the different SIGs of enhancements that are going into alpha or beta that are also very exciting. We just didn't get a chance to cover them.
Yeah, one thing I would say on top of that is go check out the KEPs. Those are really, they are long. They are very long, and it could be kind of daunting to get started in the first place, but it covers so many different scenarios and examples in there, and it's very easy to understand what's going on with a particular change. So be it stable, alpha, beta, whatever the change stage it is, you can get so much out of the KEPs. And how we put together the blogs and documentation and all the announcement like this is based on those input from the KEPs. So I would definitely highlight that the KEPs are where most of the work happens, and yeah, definitely go check them out if you're curious about any features there.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I think we will sign off and say thanks so much. I think they know where to get a hold of you if they have questions. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another live webinar with CNCF. Thank you to the Kubernetes 133 release team, and we will see y'all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.